So I'd like to welcome you to our sixth video of remote coaching, and welcome Mark Rose, who is the head coach of Manchester City Aquatics. Welcome, Mark.
Morning, Richard.
So Mark, jumping straight in, I just want to talk about the process that you took initially in the first week or so with the lockdown and the shutdown of all the pools.
Yeah, we've if you track it back a couple of weeks, as soon as there started to be some sort of rumours and some indication that we were going to end up with some closure of sorts, the chat was around it being around about 3 weeks or so, and that's what we were hearing because of city management at the council in Manchester, and that's the sort of rumours that we were hearing and getting discussed. Nothing facts. So first thing we did is as any coach would do, is we tried to preserve pool time. So as a Swim England centre, we played the Elite Training Centre card and worked with the local authority and the operators, GLL, to make sure that we retained some access for the performance squad swimmers. And initially that was approved. So we felt like with 6 days to go before what was originally announced on the Friday night, as we all know, by the Prime Minister, of closure, we believed that we got a little victory in place and we were good to go. And as things unfolded a few days through that week, it was pretty obvious, looking at what was going on in Italy and Spain and the rest of Europe, that this wasn't going to be 3 weeks. This was going to be a prolonged period of time. And about 48 hours before that announcement was made, we just thought about it, and I spent a bit of a sleepless night really thinking about, well, actually, why is the closure? The closure is there to preserve people's health. You know, it's to preserve people's well-being, and you know, regardless of whether somebody does a PB or not, if you know, it's about the well-being of people, and we are coaches of people. So I reflected on that, and then pulled my coaching team together, and we had a chat about it, and the thing I thought about was, actually, if we are going to have a closure and there aren't going to be any trials and there aren't going to be a few meets, you know, we're not going to be going to Mare Nostrum and doing that all that we like doing as coaches, the competition stuff. And what should we be doing? And the first thing that came to mind is, well, we shouldn't be training mindlessly. We should have goals, we should have objectives, we should have targets. And if there were going to be no meets, what was the point of those? You know, what was the point of training? And just to stay fit didn't really wash with me. Yeah, we need to stay in shape, but actually, we're competitive swimmers. We work in an elite environment. So we decided that we were going to give them the first week of closure off. And then myself, the coaching team, and the support staff team decided we were then going to do a phased return to training over a number of weeks. So in effect, treat it like August. And so far, that's what we've done. And twice a day on land. We're doing a few of those sessions a week on Zoom, and we're watching the athletes, checking in with the athletes every few days, and that about to come to the end of the first phase of training that the S&C coach and myself and the physio and sports scientist have all organised. So we're actually going to do a Detroit training week. We're going to have a deload week where they're going to just cement the gains. And then we're going to step up again. So what that could look like is, if the pool's open during the summer, and we all know that's an if, then we're going to have gone through a cycle of work that hopefully, fingers crossed, is going to make sure that they are technically in a decent place, because we're just doing a handful of things very, very well. We hope that they're going to be resilient to injury, because we've been trying to monitor that as much as we can and put some strength in place that's going to mean that when the volume cranks up, whenever that may be, that they are going to be in a physically decent. Give them a bit of a mental rest. So these guys now have had a bit of time where it's been okay. Going to bed at exactly the right time, and especially some of my squad that are in the 20s, the fact that they've had a few weeks where they've been able to get up 2 hours later every day
I'm questioning whether that may have helped some growth, development, some real cementing of the gain. So not just that's happened in the last few weeks, but that may have happened in training over the last couple of years. There seems to be a very positive vibe amongst the group. They're very engaged with the other members of the team. They're running workshops and running little sessions for the younger kids as we go through the pathway of the team. And everybody just seems to be beaming doing it. Now, I don't pretend for 1 minute that everything's perfect, but I do feel like actually we got this one okay. And we're trying to make sure that we learn from this process and the positive pushing on 50 weeks a year and just having 2 weeks off may not be the right solution going forward. If we come out of this on the right side in a good place, it may be that we have a secondary break or a couple of long weekends at certain points during the winter. So there's a lot of lessons to learn, and I don't pretend that that's the same for age group swimming. Don't get me wrong there, Richard. If I was coaching a squad of age groupers, repeated breaks are probably not the right thing to do, but some of these guys have already been swimming 14, 15 years. Yep. So they may need the mental break as well as the physical break.
Just touching on that break in terms of how you communicated that to the swimmers, the parents, that week off, that kind of staggered introduction back in. How did you communicate that, and was there any concerns from the members that you had to negate?
There were a few questions raised by parents of younger kids at why we were having a week off in March. And one of the things that I just highlighted was actually, we need to treat this as August. And that's been something that I've repeated again and again and again to people that have asked that question. You know, people thought we were initially that we were going to basically get back in the water in a handful of weeks and get the galas were going to be the same. The meets program was going to be the same. People were already concerned that they'd got a time that it looked like they were going to qualify for nationals, whereas we all at the performance end knew that it was unlikely a nationals was going to happen. So they were talking, specifically parents were saying, our kid's not, our little Johnny, our little Jane's not going to be in shape for summer nationals if we don't do some work now. So it was just painting the picture to them that even if there were a nationals, you know, we couldn't go straight March, April, May, June, July, all the way through for 5 months and push hard for that. We would have to take some soft weeks, and maybe this was a chance to win the disruption, which was a line that we used across the club. We got to win the disruption and make sure that we were getting the best opportunities out of it that we could.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just around a great process to start with, where are you now in terms of your land work? You talked about doing land work sometimes twice a day, and specifically you talked about you decided to do a handful of exercises or a handful of things done really well. Would you talk us through how you decided what those couple of things were going to be, those few things, and what are they?
Okay, so what we did first is before the swimmers went for their week off, they had to send me a message which was what they felt was a weak area of their racing and something that they would normally not get the chance to address. So, for example, let's pick on somebody that picked on front end speed. And this person's got great resilience and great aerobic capacity, good VO2 max capacity, and it's pretty evident from their training and their racing that that's the case, and wanted to work on the front end speed. Now, if we were going to do raw speed, and then that would have a consequence on the mid pace, the back end pace, because we run a race pace model at Manchester. So when we're doing those sets, if the front end speed is really, if you're getting DOMs, you're getting sore, you're getting tight, you're going to be poor on those. So you have to question then where the intensity in the week comes, because there can only be so much pockets of intensity during a week. So we looked at what those swimmers needed, and then we set the week up around 2 sessions a week that on land did something strange to their physiology that could help address those. So, one lad has been doing hill sprints for about 10 seconds, and that's been he's been doing that, and he's been doing a couple of very explosive exercises to try and address that. But then the rest of the week has been set up around, as you would do with the swimming, set up around setting that session up, and then after that doing bolt-on elements to it. So while there may have been a couple of exercises that were squad wide rather,
yep.
What Lewis, our S&C coach, has done is actually put in place exercises for each individual that addresses their needs. And the philosophy has been, as we've said, is let's not try and do a shed load of different things. Let's try and do a handful of things very, very technically well and very, very intense. So if you were a back-end athlete, if you wanted to improve your back-end speed and your muscular endurance and hold your stroke rate on the last 25, for example, of 100 meters, then we would have to put them in a position in the session to then do something that then they have to do that's holding that tempo, holding that rate. Lewis, our S&C coach, Lewis Fox, has done an immeasurable amount of work on this and has been an absolute godsend on this. The check and challenge, he's not afraid to talk to coaches privately and challenge the thinking, but also has a bit of a swimming background, but understands that actually it's about going from one end of the bath to the other quicker. So it's not just about lifting more weight on a squat rack. It's been about, right, well, how can this be a compound, complex exercise that has some modicum of reflection of what's going on in the water?
Right, applied back into the pool.
Yeah.
How far does that go down, Mark, within the programme? Do you know, you talk so specific there around people's individual areas of improvement. How far down the programme has that been applied in terms of the man hours that you've got?
Well, what we've done is we hung off a week to do the furlough. So what happened was we did that for the top 16 swimmers for a week, checked it, made sure we got an idea of what we thought was right. And then we got the coaches of the other squads to look at, right, what's a common technical deficiency? What's a common physiological deficiency amongst your group of 16, 20, 24 athletes, depending on which squad it was. And then we got Lewis to basically do something that helped address that in conjunction with that coach. So it's gone right through down to our community clubs that train 3 times a week in places like Moss Side and Hough End and Gorton. And that's really to make sure that those swimmers are still engaged with the club, because we want, if I put the other part of my hat on, I'm working for the city and making sure that people are physically engaged as well as high performance swimming. So the reality is I don't want 400 or 500 kids being sedentary throughout the city. We want to give them something to do. And Lewis was great in helping with that. So he went throughout the club, and there was a lot of man hours, I would say, a bit like a normal coach's week, 60, 70 hours a week for the first week. But then we were in a position where it could just be topped up after that, because we put a plan together that's gone. We've planned till the end of June.
Yep.
With that. We've got 3 cycles of work through to the end of June with that. Each coach has been involved, but a lot of our coaching staff now that are employed by the club, rather than myself that's employed by the city, are now furloughed, so they're not working. But we do have a social coffee a couple of times a week as a group of coaches, and take the mickey out of each other and check in on each other. The general coaching banter and mickey taking that goes on in every club, I know. Okay. So, and those things do get discussed. It's obvious,
My final question, Mark, is around, and you talked about the well-being of people as well as the performance. It is around the impact. What impact do you think you're having on the members, not just from necessarily a performance or a progression point of view?
I've got to be honest here, Richard, I just don't know. And none of us will know what impact we're having. We think we're having a positive impact because we're trying to have a positive impact. We're trying to keep engaged. We are doing what a lot of people will be doing, fun challenges, how many t-shirts you can stick on in a minute. I've asked people to film the haircuts and who's done the best home haircuts and stuff like that. And, you know, the senior athletes that are doing that are doing a good job with that, helping push that forwards and get that out to everybody. And there's a lot of engagement from the younger swimmers on that.
That's good.
I don't imagine it's easy when you're not busy. And some families are not going to be busy. And I can't imagine that we're going to be able to absolutely change everything and make a massive positive impact on their home environment, their mental well-being, because we have a responsibility informally, in my opinion, to parents as well as swimmers, because the parents are part and parcel. We call it the tripod of power. If the swimmer's going to reach a high level, you've got to have three legs. You've got to have the swimmer doing it, the parent supporting it, and the coach supporting it. And if one of those legs isn't working, it doesn't work. So we want to try and support the parents. How that's working, we'll only know when things come back.
Yeah.
But we've got people trying the best to engage on social media and on private group chats and what have you. And again, we're all in a new situation. The priority, though, has to be the well-being of the athletes and the checking in weekly with athletes, making sure that they're in a decent place. Have they got any questions? You can sort of read when somebody's under the weather a little bit and feeling a little bit down. We've been very lucky, as in we believe we've only had 2 people come down with illness during this outbreak. One of them was our sports scientist, Luke, who had showed all the symptoms of COVID. And we were worried that we're going to go through my squad like wildfire. And touch wood, you know, it's not happened. And one lad that thinks he's had the virus. So as it stands, we're very lucky physically. But as you rightly said, what impact are we having on the mental health and well-being of the general club and its members? We can only do our best, Richard, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I asked the question, going out some of the feedback that's been received by the clubs, and you're a father of 2, I'm a father of 2. I know when my children receive stuff from their sports clubs, and the smile on their face when they receive something, some form of engagement, you know, it does lift them throughout that day. And you look at it from that point of view, it's far greater than sport. It's just their well-being. Yes. I think what you're saying is we won't know until we get back. I think probably with the stuff that you're doing, Mark, you'll get an awful lot of positive feedback and understand just the massive impact that we're having.
I think that's right, Richard. And, you know, a great example of that, another swimming club, Rotherham Metro, a club I swam for. My little lad swims for them now. And his coach sent a message and a joke round last week. And that went down like a storm in our house. And that taught me a little lesson, you know. No, he's a 7-year-old lad on the second squad in Rotherham, training 3 or 4 times a week, and that showed me that you know, don't neglect the contact. Don't neglect the contact. But here's the other point as well, Richard. This is the point, and this is one of the reasons why I wrote an article, as I'm sure you're aware of, and Kev Renshaw sent it round, and it was actually we need to reflect as well. You talk about you being a family man and having 2 kids, and we need to check and challenge, are we looking after everything at home as well and ourselves? Because I had a day Tuesday which my last call finished at 9:30 at night and I started at 9 a.m. Now, let's be honest here, coaches are not great at stepping back at times. And that was another wake up for me. Actually, you know what? Kids are at home. They're not at school. I need to spend some time with them. You know, not just to tick the box, but actually spend some time with them and actually do some stuff with them. So all of us as coaches, we need to make sure that we're looking after ourselves physically, mentally, and with the support system that we have around us. I talked about the fact that our families give up a lot to enable us to follow our coaching dream. And while we're at home now, we need to give back. We need to support them as well, because our partners, our kids are going to be missing their normal environment. And don't spend just your physical and emotional energy supporting everybody at the end of the Zoom chat. You know, look at what's in front of you.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. Thanks, Mark. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure everybody massively appreciates that.
Anytime, Richard. Anytime.
Thank you very much.